Howdy folks, thanks for stopping in at Dad's Toolbox. In today's video, we're going to talk about rabbit tractors. Alright, so built these, I got two of these, built these rabbit tractors over the past couple days and I'm trying them out. And I said I'd do a follow-up video if I ran into some issues, and of course I have. As you can see here, our buck is digging holes, and I don't want him to dig holes. Now the cure for that is to put wire on the bottom. I didn't want to put wire on the bottom because I wanted to be able to move the tractor with the rabbit in it, but that's not going to work out that way, so I'm going to have to put wire on the bottom. So here's our dough, and here's another example of the digging. So we're going to have to put, like I said, put wire on the bottom. And then we'll make permanent accommodations for the food and water.
Alright, so I picked up a roll of 3-foot garden wire. I wanted wire with gaps large enough for the grass to be able to pop up through the wire, but small enough to prevent the rabbits from digging. Garden wire is designed to be run vertically against the ground along your garden to keep the critters out. And the holes closer to the ground are smaller, and they get larger as you travel higher from the ground. Presumably, the idea is that the smaller critters are closer to the ground, and as the critters get taller, they get bigger, so the holes don't need to be so small. Anyway, this suited my purposes because I noticed that the rabbits dug mostly near the corners of the tractor. So I attached the wire in such a way that the smallest holes were near the corners, which prevented the digging, and the bigger holes were near the middle, which allowed the grass to come up through the bottom. I used a pneumatic stapler to attach the wire to the bottom and the side rails. This stapler uses the U-shaped staples, not the square ones I use like when I attach the chicken wire. You know, the ones that are kind of like the school or office staples.
Alright folks, it's really hot out here today. My cameras keep overheating, so I'm having to switch back and forth in between cameras. But what I started this camera up for is to show you what I'm doing with the staple gun. We can't look at it from behind the over-the-shoulder view that I had set up. What I'm doing here is I'm stapling right here across these intersections, and to accomplish that, you see the little safety there on the staple gun. I put it basically right in that V, and I push and bing, just like that. Oh, trying to this on camera is more challenging than I thought. Yeah, and that's how that turns out. Now you can see I drug that one down too far, but that's all right. We're not building a grand piano here.
The tractors are 2 foot by 4 foot, so the 3-foot wire overlapped by about a foot in the middle. And like I said earlier, I placed the smaller holes towards the ends of the tractor with the bigger holes in the middle. I stapled the wire to the side and then onto the bottom of the first side rail. And then I bent it over and I'd stretch it tight, and then I would staple it to the bottom on the opposite side. With the bottom stapled, I cut the wire along the outer edge of the next strand of wire to end the run, and then stapled down the wire onto the side of the side rail. And before I started my next run, I cut off all those little tails left over from the first cut, and I saved those because I had a plan on how to use those.
Okay, what we got here is an old set of fencing, or some people use these for electrical work, but they're fencing pliers. And what we're doing is we're cutting the tails off of these things here. One of the things that's important to think about when you're using these is which side your cutters are on. You see there's a recess there. If I were to try and cut right here, you see that leaves me about a 1/2 inch nub. However, I can cut almost flush if I turn the pliers over and cut right there. Also, think about how you hold your pliers. This is actually how they're designed to be used. Just a little plier knowledge for you.
Oh, and I also tasked Marshall with harvesting some of those useful little scraps. Doesn't he look thrilled? I used the tails I saved to seal the bottom of the cage where I overlapped the 2 runs of wire. All that was needed was for me to bend the little sections of wire around the places where the 2 panels intersected, and then I'd crimp it down with a pair of pliers. And if there was anything sticking up or out, I'd just cut it off so that there would be nothing sticking up into the cage to injure the rabbits. It probably would have been fine, but it seemed feasible to me that the rabbits may be able to force their way between the layers of wire and possibly injure themselves, or even worse, get stuck under there. I couldn't imagine that would have been a good thing.
So one of the other issues I've had is that the rabbits keep knocking their bowls over. So my solution is going to be these here. I got them at Tractor Supply. I was using this for water over there in the hutch, but what this will allow me to do is I can place it down here in the corner, and it'll automatically water over the course of the day. And when this thing lifts up, when I go to drive this thing around, it'll come up because now we've got the wire in the bottom. And then I can run a piece of wire around here, just right around the top, that'll keep this from knocking over. And then when we go to refill it, you just pull that wire up out of the way and slide this out from under it. So that's my plan of action there. I'll show you a little technique for making your baling wire double thick, but also very easy to work with. What I've done here is I've cut off a stretch about 6 foot long. I'm going to take these two ends right here and line them up end to end. Then I get my cordless drill. Okay, so now we're chucked up in the drill. You can get your fencing pliers, take the handle, just one side of the handle. Don't do this with rubber coated handles. If you don't have any bare metal pliers, you can use a screwdriver for this part. If you use the coated handles, what you'll end up with is big cuts in your handles. Okay, so now what I'm doing here is I'm just tapping it tight so it's as straight as it can be. Now what I'm going to do is, while keeping tension spreading, I'm going to pull the trigger and let this wind up. Okay. There we go. That's good enough. And slide it, but you could just slide it right off the handle. That's a good thing about the metal handles. And now what you've got is this doubled up piece of baling wire. It's nice and thick and stiff, that you can use for projects, tighter things you're going to tie heavier duty than just baling wire by itself.
So I made a few of those doubled up baling wire straps and installed those. Mason and Marshall both helped. All I did was determine the height I thought would suffice and then adjust them against the feeder until it was secure, and then staple them down with the U-shaped staples. I'm not going to tell you how many takes it took me to get those words out.
Oh, hold on. I dripped sweat on the phone and it caused the autofocus to go out of whack. All right, try that again. Okay, so that's how you put the water in, right? Wiggle it around. Can you get it out of there? Like if you're a crazy bunny? You don't think so?
Nope.
All right, now let's take it out so we can go fill it with water. Beautiful. Good deal.
Once I had the food and water straps installed, I needed to make sure that they would travel well. Other than losing a little bit of water to sloshing as you moved it around, they seemed to work great. And really you could minimize that by just moving a little bit slower and a little bit more gently. But we'll be revisiting this topic later. Alright, so I broke one of the wheels test rolling one of the tractors after I put the wire on the bottom. Ironically, it was just minutes after my wife had told me she was headed to the Tractor Supply Company to get supplies. I was able to catch her in the driveway before she left, and I added a new set of Rabbit Tractor off-road tires to the shopping list. Yeah, don't get the street wheels. The rabbits don't last long out in the street. Just saying.
Alright, so when you have a project out in the backyard, you can run extension cords, and that's great. But you can also use that time to do maintenance runs on your generators. If you don't run them often enough, pretty soon they'll start to clog up and die. So if you take the opportunity to run them when you can, even for just a few minutes, your generators will last longer and they'll run when you need them to.
When Mason and the wheels made it back to the house from town, we got to work installing them. I installed them the same way I did the previous ones. I go into detail in the build video on the second tractor in case you missed it. With the new wheels in place, she ran like a dream. And just when I thought we were up and running, the rabbits threw me another curveball. For whatever reason, they really don't like things in the corners of their cage that aren't white and fuzzy. I tried a few times to adjust the straps I installed to secure the feeders, but the point at which the rabbits can't get them out, neither could we. So I cut a slot in the back of the tractor and drilled some holes, like you see here, and that's where I installed the gravity feeders. The slot is for the portion of the feeder that presents the food, and the holes were for the wire that I used to secure the feeder to the tractor. Here we are again with that doubled up baling wire. It's really handy. This really worked out because the feeder could be filled without having to take it out of the tractor. And if you do this, make sure you get the feeders with the lids. Otherwise, after the first rain, you'll have an enormous block of rabbit food rather than pellets. Once all the little issues were worked out, it was smooth sailing. We moved the rabbits every day to a spot where they would have new forage and they would be able to deposit their used food to fertilize our lawn. It worked a lot like slow motion lawn mowing. We would slowly spiral them around the yard until the whole yard had been done and then start over from the beginning. They'd eat down the grass, and then within a few days of moving them, the grass would grow back thicker and greener than before. And it really took off when I started following the rabbit tractors with the chicken tractor I built. Once we were sure we could sustain them in this way, we began our breeding program. Rabbits gestate for about 30 days, and then it's another 6 to 8 weeks before the kits, or baby rabbits, are ready to leave the nest. Some folks will raise multiple females and breed them to a single male so that they can have a constant rotation of new babies being born as the previous litter is moving on. If you breed your rabbits, you can raise them for meat or for pets. I've done both. If you sell a few, or all of them, as pets, you can actually pay for your feed, which means you'll be getting your lawn cared for, some extra meat in your freezer, and a few dollars here and there for your effort. It was totally worth it for us. And that's going to do it for this video. I want to thank you folks for taking the time to stop in and check it out. Give me a thumbs up if you think I'm doing good work here. And if you know anybody that's into stuff like this, share this video with them. See if they can make use of what I've done here. And if you'd like to see more videos like this one or check in on some of the other projects we're doing, hit that subscribe button so you'll know when I put new stuff out. Y'all take care.